Welcome to another Godot 4 tutorial, and today I'm going to go over exactly how to make a working menu for any Godot game that you may have. I'm going to go over like how to add a menu to your own Godot game. It could be any game possible that needs a menu, that has UI, that has buttons, that has a play button, a quit button, a pause button, a settings button, all that different stuff I'm going to go over in this exact video. As you can see, this is a very bare Flappy Bird game. But by the end of this tutorial, we're going to make this Flappy Bird game turn into this. With a play button, a settings button, a quit button, and a shows a score at the end. It shows a score in the middle. And it even, has a continue button that goes back to the main menu. And just has different menu buttons to be able to control the game and make it look a little bit nicer than it would. But even if you're not making a Flappy Bird game and you have your own game, a very custom game that you created all by yourself, then this is still going to teach you how exactly a menu works and how to add it to that game. So to get started with creating our menu, we are going to go and we are going to add in our menu art. And this is going to be an entire folder. There will be a link to download this in the description below. And in our menu art, we just kind of have a bunch of different buttons that we're not going to use them all. We are going to use some of them, but we're not going to use them all. But you can download this in the description below. So before this video starts, I just want to let you know that to get the most out of this video, I recommend you going and watching the previous video, which I'll have linked in the comments down below, or in the pinned comment in the description, and it will be a card at the very end of this video as well. But I think that you need to watch that video before, especially if you're new to Godot. If you're not new to Godot, then you should understand how I'm going about it and creating menus. But if you're relatively new to Godot, then I really recommend you watching that video before, so you can see the entire thought process from the very start of a game to the very end of a Godot game, or any game, right? So even if you don't want to make Flappy Bird, even if you don't care about Flappy Bird, even if you don't think Flappy Bird's a good game and you don't want to code it yourself, Flappy Bird is one of the best learners. So to create our UI, as you can see when we play, we have a Flappy Bird and we have pipes that will come at us as we play. We don't have any, UI to show score or anything like that, because that is, it's down here that we got one score because it prints it, but we have no UI. So to go about creating a main menu and UI, we're going to have to create a brand new scene, and we're going to name this scene UI. This is going to be a canvas layer. This is going to be a canvas layer, and we're going to name it UI. Now, it doesn't matter what you're creating. If you're creating a main menu, a pause menu, a shop, a cell zone, whatever it may be, that something pops up onto your screen, that's going to be classified as UI. So we're going to name it UI just to keep everything neat and clean. And to start off, the way that we're going to go about creating UI is I'm going to make the very end of the game screen first, and then I'm going to move to the during game screen, then we'll move to the very beginning, or the main screen with the play button and everything at the very beginning. So if you want to, skip ahead to figure out what sections you need, I think you need to watch it in order so you can, understand exactly how the entire thing works. So on our UI, we're going to add a node 2D, and I'm going to name this node 2D our end of game screen, right? So this is our in-game screen, so we can hide and we can have it visible whenever we want. So this is going to show at the very end of the game. So whatever you want is going to show at the end of the game. So we're going to start with a button, and we're going to keep everything very simple. We're going to name this our restart button, and we are going to end up creating a new script for our UI at the very top. UI.gd is fine. And we can remove everything in here. We can save, Control S to save everything. We can go to our restart button, and we can go to node, and we can signal a pressed to our UI. So we have this in here. And we want to go and add another node 2D to our button, and this is going to be our sprite 2D, which is going to be what our button actually looks like. So we can go to our texture, we can go to load, we can go to our art, we can go to our menu art, and we can pick whatever button we want. I'm just going to go with, this one as our respawn button. And as you can see, it is very big. So we can size this down. I'm just going to eyeball it for the middle, something like this. And that looks fine. Now we can get our button, and we can size up our button. We're going to have to remove our sprite 2D from the button itself, so it doesn't move as we size up the button to fit the button's actual box. And I'm just going to keep it around this centerpiece, so when we click the centerpiece, then it will restart, right? And then we can put our sprite 2D back into our button. You're gonna see we have a little hangover, so we can go to our button. We can come down here all the way to our visibility. We can go self-modulate and we can make that invisible. And now everything looks good, right? So, and also on our in-game screen, we're gonna want another node because we're gonna want some way to display the score, right? So we can say we want a node 2D. And actually, yeah, okay, so we want a node 2D. And we can name this as this will be our in-game score display. Now that I'm thinking about it, actually, okay, we do have to do this because we need our label to be on top of the sprite 2D. So we could make the label and then the sprite 2D be under it, but we're just gonna make an entire new scene, right? So, or not, it's not a new scene, but we'll name this our in-game score display, right? So this is our score display that's gonna show at the very end of the game. And under this, we can add our label. And under this, we can also add our sprite 2D. And for the sprite 2D, I'm going to load the texture. And we're going to use this square. So we can show the score. Make the square a little smaller so it looks better on the screen, just like that. And then we can use our label. We can set text. We can say 0 is the text for now. And we can obviously put the label in front. Our label is going to be all the way up here, so we can move it down to here. And then we can size it up by going down here to our, where is it? It's not in display text, is it? It should be transform right here. So it's going to be in the layout and then inside the transform. That's not in the layout, is it? I think that's separate. But no, okay, it is in the layout. So you got to go to layout and then you got to go to transform. And then we're going to scale it up by 5, I guess. Does 5 work? 5 works. See, that looks good. So 5, boom. So that will change based on whatever score that we do get. And we will name this label our points because this is going to be our points display. And everything looks good, right? So this is our end of the game screen. This is what's going to pop up at the very end of the game. Now, we're going to go into our UI.gd, right? And we're going to start the script from scratch. So, in our script, we're going to have some functions. We're going to go up to the top and we're going to have a class name so we can keep the entire game organized. And we're going to have UI. I also forgot to mention, if you want to make the Flappy Bird that we do have right here, I will have a link to that video in the description below. I just made that very recently. It was the very last video uploaded to the channel where I went over how to create this Flappy Bird from start to finish, step by step. We're also going to have a signal, and so we can signal when the game is started. This is going to be used later. This is not going to be used now. This is going to be used once we have our beginning of the game screen, right? When we have our play button, so we can signal game has started. And then we're also going to have a variable, which is going to be our game points, right? And that can be equal to 0 for now. Now, we're going to make each scene or each screen that we have into its own variable. So we're going to have an onReady var, and we're going to name this our end of game screen, right? And this can just equal into our end of game screen. And now we're going to go down here, and inside of this function we're going to have a restart button. And what is a restart button going to do? We're going to keep it basic and just say get tree dot reload the current scene, so we kind of go back to the beginning of that scene. And then we're going to have some different functions, right? So first I'm going to have a ready function that we are not going to use right this instant. We are going to use that soon though. And then we're going to have we need a basic function, some function that is going to be able to update our points, so we can have a point display at the very end of the game like we created. So we can say function, and we can update our points, right? We can update our points to points, and we can make that into an integer. So update point. So we're going to end up calling this function here in a minute in our game manager script. So we haven't called it yet, so it doesn't really do anything. But when we call this function, we're going to pass through our variable, which is going to end up as points. So we can set our game points to equal to points, right? So points is the variable that we pass through from a different script, which we will create very soon. And game points is going to be, you know, the local variable inside of the script, so we can access it in different functions, right? So we can have a function on game over, which we are also going to call in a minute once we go and update our game manager script. But we have on game over, and on game over we want in game screen dot visible, right? Okay, we did not call it that. We called it end of game screen. So end of game screen dot visible, and we want this to equal to true, right? Because the game's over, we want it to equal to true. And then we also want our game points text to update to whatever the actual game points is. So we'll say end of game screen slash end of game score display slash our points dot the text on that label, and then to transfer the to change the string into a variable, we can do that, the %d, which is going to change a string that we input into a variable, right? Or I'm saying that completely wrong. It's going to change our integer, which is going to be our variable, because it's going to be an integer as we pass it through. It's going to be an integer, and we need to change it into a string. So it's going to change our integer into a string so we can make that as the text on our label. Hopefully that makes sense, right? So now we're going to end up going to our our game manager script, which, like I said, I went over this in the last video. So every game should have some sort of game manager script. So you should have some sort of, you know, part in your game where you point scored and you have a point scored and an in-game function, right? Wherever your in-game function is. So in your game, if you have a function that says in-game, and it's gonna, like, obviously it's gonna kill the bird, it's gonna stop the pipes from spawning, that is where you're gonna want to be. It doesn't matter what it says on here, it matters what that function does. So if that function ends the game, that's where you want to be, right? So first of all, before we come down to that function, we need to create a variable. We just need to instance our UI. So to be able to instance our UI, we're going to go to our main, and we're going to instance our UI scene into our main scene, and then we're going to save that, and then we're going to go back to our game manager, and we're going to set an on ready var. We're going to name this var UI, and we're going to say UI is going to be equal to money sign, and then we're going to access it through doing that. So it knows that it's on this level and the name of it is UI, right? And then we can access that as UI. But if we go down to in-game, and then in your in-game, wherever this is in your game, you're going to want to access your UI first, and then you're going to want to call your on game over function. That is going to obviously go into our UI script, and it's going to run this function right here, right? And then we're also going to want to update our points. Wherever your point scored function is, you're going to want to go to that area, and you're going to want to say UI dot, and you're going to want to call whatever we called that other function. I think we called that just update points, and then we're going to want to pass through our points variable, right? So points variable is our variable that is right here, right? It's our variable that it's a local variable inside of our game manager script that is ended up passing through, obviously, whenever a point is scored. And then we're going to pass that variable through into our UI, and into our UI we're going to use that variable right here, and we're going to update our local variable in our UI. So now we're going to go on and we're going to create the during game screen. So we can close our in-game screen, and then, or actually we can play and everything should work. So first, obviously, we want to have it hidden, but if we play our main scene with it hidden and we start to play, you can see that everything works. We're at score 1 right now, and we die, and it's going to output that our score is 1. But if we get up to 2, or if we get up to 0, so that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, and then let's say we die, right? Boom. Okay, we have 3 score, and then this restarts the game every single time, right? So that is working good. So if we go back to our UI, and then we create a brand new node 2D, not a node by itself, we want a node 2D, And then we're going to name this our during game screen. This one is going to be very, very fast to create, right? This is going to be very simple. So in-game screen, our during game screen. In our during game screen, all we're going to want in our during game screen is a point label at the very top of the screen, right? So to do that, we can go to our during game and we can just add a label to it. Like this is going to be just straight up a label. We can set the text to 0. We can go down to our layout. We can transform and we can set up the size to 4 or 5, something like that, just so we can have it centered like so. And then we can rename this into points, and then we can go into our script. That's all we have to do in that part. We can go into our script. We can set a onReadyVar, and then we can have our during game screen, and we can equal that to our during game screen, and then we can figure out what we have to do. So in our ready function, obviously we want that to equal to 0, right? We want that to be equal to 0 whenever we first start, so we can access our during game screen slash our points dot the text on that label, because we want to change it, and then we want to change our integer. We want to change our integer into a string, so we can say %, and then we can just say 0, because we want to change this integer right here, which is 0, and we want to change that into a string. We could also just, you know, do that. We could also just do this without the %0 behind that, but I'm just going to keep it, you know, universal all the way throughout the entire script, right? So that, and then we want to go down to our update points, and every time a point updates, we want to change our during game. So we'll say during game screen slash points, and then dot the text is going to the exact same thing, basically $D to change our integer into a string, and we can say the points, right? Or we could say game points just to use the local function, but you don't have to do that, right? Because we're just going to take the points straight from the other script at this point. And then we're going to go down to our game over, and at the game over, we're going to want to add one more, because on game over, we want our during game screen to not be visible, right? So we'll say during game screen dot visible is going to be equal to false, because at that point, we're going to want to hide our during game screen, and we're going to want to show our in-game screen. So if we go to our main menu, let's make sure the during game screen is visible and the in-game screen is not visible. Then we play. You can see that we have a during game screen. It's not completely centered, but obviously that's super easy to fix. That's going to update as well. We're at 2, and then let's die on purpose, and you see it hides and it shows that we have 2 right here. Click restart, and it's going to restart as well. So we can go to our UI real quick, and we can just scoot that over a tad. But now we want to add our brand new, you know, screen, and we're going to name this a node 2D as well. And this is going to be our before game scene, our before game screen, right? And this is going to be the hard one. This is going to be the one that is going to be the most complicated. It's going to have the most different stuff on it, the most menus and everything, but it should not take long either, because it is also pretty basic. So we're going to start off by just making the play button, and we'll say a button, and then we'll say this button is going to be our play button. We're going to start it off very, very simple, right? And then when this play button is pressed, we're going to go to our node, and we're going to send a press signal to our UI script. When this press button, or when the play button is pressed, what are we going to end up wanting to do, right? So we'll end up doing this here in a minute, but let's think about this for a second. So obviously we're going to have our play button, and on this play button, it's going to want to start the game, right? So we're going to want to emit a signal somewhere. That's where we're going to emit this game starter signal. But right now, our game starts by when we click the up button on our bird, because that's just the way I set it up, right? So we also want to show the start screen, and we want to show the start screen at the start of the game, and we want to hide the during game screen. So we need to, you know, add a signal in our game manager script to be able to call this out. So if we go back to our main, and we go to our game our game manager script, right? If we go to our game manager script and we go into our ready function all the way up here, you see that our bird.GameStarted connect game starts. That is what connects our game, and that's what is telling our game to start, because in our bird, back in our bird, when we click up, we're gonna say game started.emit. So we can kind of remove this, right? Now the game won't start when we jump for the very first time. We can also go up here and signal game started. We can also remove that. So if we go back to our main and we go back to our game manager, you see bird.GameStarted.connect game started. We do not have any type of bird that is sending a game started signal. So we can change this to our UI, because our UI is going to be sending the game started signal, right? And then on our function game started, whenever we go down here and we say, or we're going to want to have to emit a signal, right? So we're going to have to emit a signal that our bird is flying. So the moment our bird flies, this right here, what I'm doing right now, has no correlation to this. This is completely separate. This is what starts the game. But once the game is started, we want our UI to know that the game has started, so we can hide the before game screen and we can show the during game screen, right? So we can create a brand new signal for this, right? And we'll go up here and we'll say signal. We'll keep it simple, like the bird is flying, right? And we're gonna want to go down here as the moment our game starts, right? The very single second our game starts, we're gonna want to hide the beginning game screen, and we're going to want to show the during game screen. So when the game starts, we're gonna emit this bird is flying signal, and then we're going to go into our game manager. We're gonna go to our node bird is flying, and we're gonna send this signal into our UI script, right? So okay, that's good. So in our UI script, we have a brand new function. This is what happens at the moment the game starts. So when the game starts, we're gonna say before, or we have not actually done that yet, but we can add our before game screen. So we can say on ready var before game screen is equal to our before game screen, right? And then we're going to want to go down here and we're going to want to say our before game screen dot visible is going to be equal to false, and we're going to want to say our during game screen is equal to true, right? So now if we play and test, everything should be working, right? So if we go to our UI, or if we go to our actually, it's not going to be working because we have no way to actually start the game, right? We have no way to start the game. So we're actually going to have to change this up a second. So if we go into our on play button press, as the moment that button is pressed, we're going to want to just emit the signal. So we'll say game started dot emit, right? Because we're going to emit that signal the moment the game starts. And then after we emit the signal, the game should start. Boom. All right, game started. And then we're going to, as soon as the game starts, obviously this function is going to end up being called from the other script, and it's going to hide our before game, and it's going to show our during game screen. This has to actually be dot visible, right? And that's what's going to happen. So we don't actually have our button set up yet, right? So our play button, we can just for now, we'll make it like this so we can make sure everything works. So if we go to our play screen, or we go to our UI, we want to make sure our during game is hidden at the very beginning, right? And we go to our play screen, and you're going to see we have this button. The game is not started. The game will not start until we hit that button. That's our play button. Once we hit this button, the game now starts, right? You see the score pop up at the top, and the game's going to start. But okay, so the bird can still jump, which is obviously not good. The game does not start though, but the bird still can jump. So if we go to our UI, or if we go to our bird, let me fix this. This has nothing to do with the menu tutorial, but if we have if action is pressed process input, we just want to take if not started. So if our input that is action press UI up, and we can process input, then we're also going to want to say if started. If the game started, then we want to jump, right? So that will fix all the issues that we were having. So if we go to our main and then we play, we can't jump. Once we start the game, we still can't jump, which is not good, obviously. That's horrible. So where do we change our started? So I don't think, do we ever change this? We never change the started. So we have to end up finding a way to change this variable, the started variable. So we can just keep this very simple, and we can go to our game managers, and we can send this bird is flying node to our bird script, and then we can say, if we do that, then started is going to be equal to true, and now everything should work just fine, right? So if we go to our UI, or if we go to our main and we play, I did not spell started correctly, which is the first issue. So if we save that now, it's gonna give me an error. But if we play, we can't jump. We click this button and then we start falling, right? So the moment we click the play button, we start falling, and then we can jump, and everything works good. And we die, it shows a score. We can restart, go back to this screen. We can, you know, we can't jump, we can't do anything. We click the play button, we start falling, and then we can go up, and we can do everything just like you're supposed to be able to do, right? But now we need some sort of setting button, and we need some sort of quit button. And let me obviously first make this UI button the correct, have some sort of sprite. So I'm gonna go to 2D. We're gonna go to our sprite. We're gonna go to our texture. We're gonna go to our load. We're gonna go to our art, our menu art, and we're going to take one of these little play buttons. We're also gonna remove that from the button for now, so we can size it up to the correct amount like this. And then we can move that into the button. We can go to our button. We can go down here to our visibility, and then we can go to our self modulate, and we can make that invisible, right? We can maybe move this over just a little bit, just like so, to try and center it up a little bit more. But as you can see, we have a play button. Can't jump, can't do anything. We click play, and then everything starts to work perfectly good. And that is very, very nice. So this is already looking pretty good. This is already looking much better than it was. We can also move the bird up a little bit on the main script, just so it's above that, just so it's above the start a little bit. So obviously that looks a lot better. As soon as we start falling, and everything looks really, really good. So now we're gonna go through and we're gonna add a basic little, we're gonna add a quit button, and we're going to add some sort of settings button to the game. So we can start off by just adding the buttons by going to our Node 2D, and we can add a, well, I guess, okay, so we'll do the quit button first because the quit button is going to be much easier. So we'll do button, and then we can name this button into our quit button. And then we can go, we can size this up down here somewhere. This can be down here a little bit, like right here. We can go to our node, we can add a sprite 2D, we can make this some sort of sprite. We can go art, we can go menu art, and we can take, I don't know, a square, and we'll make this square into our quit button, right? And this will be our quit button right here. I want it to be pretty small, so it's like kind of out of the way, but it's still there, it's still visible, and you can still obviously click the button. And we'll make the button about the same size. We'll add the sprite under the quit button. We'll go to the button, we'll go to the visibility, and we'll do self modulate to nothing, right? This is going to be our quit button. So whenever this button is clicked or pressed, we're going to go to our node, press signal to our UI. So when the quit button is pressed, we're going to do something that's very, very basic. It's going to be one line. We'll say get tree, the most basic way to quit a game. Obviously, if you're going to save the game and stuff, that's where you would do that right here. But we'll say get tree.quit, and we can run that, right? So obviously now when we play the game, we have another button. If we click it, it's going to automatically quit the game. We can play the game. We can go. We can, you know, score 0 points. We can restart, and then we can quit the game, right? So that's going to work every single time that we run the game. Now we're going to need some sort of setting function, right? So we can go to our UI, and then we can go to our before game, and we can add a, we'll go with another button to open up the setting menu. We're going to have to make a whole menu for the setting, right? And that won't take very long, but it will be setting button. And we need this to, I'm going to copy the sprite 2D from here, and we're going to add the sprite to this one. But then we're also going to remove the sprite just so we can make everything lined up, right? So we don't move both at the same exact time. I kind of want to move it here. We're going to lock the child on this one so we can move them around. And then I guess we can also bring the button down, and at least for now, we can size it up to this, and then we can lock the child on it as well. So we can move it around. We can go something like this. Something like this. And then we can go to our setting button. We can go to our inspector. We can do visualize, visibility. And then we can set the self-modulate to 0. We can move the sprite 2D into it. We can lock the child on this one as well with this little button up top. And then we can, you know, on the play button, I'm also going to lock the child. So we can kind of move everything around now, right? So we can say the play button's here, and then we can have, this is going to be the quit button. That's going to be the setting button. We can kind of have it set up like that. How does that look as we play the game? Like that looks all right, right? That looks fine. We have our play button. We have our quit button, and then we have our setting button that does not do anything. That works for now. I might change that around at the end after the video is over, but that's gonna work for the tutorial, right? And then we have our setting button. We're gonna go to our node, and we're gonna say when this setting button is pressed, we're gonna send a signal to our UI, and basically when our button is pressed, what are we gonna want to do, right? So first of all, we need to show our settings screen, but we don't have the settings screen. So how are we gonna do that if we don't have the settings screen, right? So we're going to go all the way out into the main UI, and we're going to add another node to D, and we can name this into our setting screen, right? And our setting screen is going to consist of a sprite 2D, and our setting screen is also going to consist of a button, because we're going to need some sort of button to exit, right? And we can name this our exit menu button. And then on our sprite 2D, we can set this as a background sprite, right? So this is going to be the background of our menu. So this is going to be our background of the settings screen. That's very long. I'm not going to do that. I don't know why I put that entire thing there. We'll just name this the background, right? And then for the background, we can hide the before game screen just so we can set this up real quick. And then we'll go down here to load art, menu art. We'll pick this one. We'll make it very, very small, something like this. And then this button here, we're going to add another sprite to this, and this is going to be our back button sprite. So we can say menu art, the back arrow. We can kind of hide this up here in the corner like that. And then our sprite, our exit menu, we can bring this button and we can size it up just so it's around that same area. We can go down here to the visibility, self-modulate. We can make it invisible. We can add our sprite under our button, and then we can lock the child on that button. So that looks good, right? We can go to our exit menu, and we can send a press signal to our UI. And then once we have that, we're going to go into our main script, and we can go up here to the top. We can make a new onReady var. This will be an onReady var to our setting screen, right? This will be to our setting screen, and that will just equal the setting screen, right? So we'll go to our setting button, and in our settings button, when we click this, we're going to want our setting screen dot visible to equal to true, and then we're going to want our before game screen to screen dot visible to equal to false. And then whenever we hit this exit button, which this is actually the button, isn't it? No, this is our settings button, isn't it? So this is the button that inputs us into, okay, yeah, so this is the button that opens up the setting. And then our exit button, whenever we want to close it, we'll say setting screen dot visible is going to be equal to false, and then our before game screen dot visible is going to be equal to true, and that should all work. Everything should be working fine, right? So if we play, obviously our settings screen is going to be open automatically. So if we go to our UI, we can say before game and we can hide the settings screen. The only one you want showing is the before game. When we play, everything works. So we have our settings. It's going to bring up the settings menu. We can close out. We can quit, which we don't want to do. But the settings, bring it up, close it, bring it up, close it, bring it up, close it, bring it up, close it. Like, that's how you add a menu to your game, right? And obviously, anything that you want in this menu would be added under the settings menu, node 2D, that's in the UI. And then we can play. We have an end game. Now, if you wanted to actually add settings to the game, I'm not going to add any settings to this game, but if you were to add settings, it would be very, very easy, right? So obviously you would have a button that toggles on and off, or you would have a slider that you would add to this node under here inside of this node on top of the background, so it's showing. And when you move it, if you like, let's say you have the master volume button or the general volume button and or slider, and you change it from 68 volume to 34 volume, right? And you went on 34 volume. Well, you're gonna change the global variable of the master volume from 64 or from 68 to 34 whenever it changes on the settings screen. You're gonna move it. So when the settings screen changes, you're gonna change that input on the global script so you can access that from every other script. So you can change the volume inside of a processes function in any other script, right? That's gonna run constantly over and over and over forever. So that's how you would do that. Now, I think to get the best understanding of this video, if you still have questions, let me know in the comments down below. But to get the best understanding of this video, I really do think that you need to watch the previous video, which I'll have linked in the description below. I'll also have it as a card at the very end of this video. I'll also have it in the pinned comment as well. But I think you really need to watch that video just so you can understand the entire thought process from the very beginning to the very end of how to create a game from start to finish. I hope this taught you how to create menus in your own game. If it did not, if you need help and you still have questions about it, then please let me know in the comments and I will be for sure to get back to you and help you out. We can even hop on a Discord call maybe and I can help you out one-on-one right then and there, right? But I really do hope everything does work, and I hope that everybody could understand every single part of it. If this video did help and you did have a good time listening to this video and enjoying this video and you learned something new today, then please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on this video so more inspiring Godot developers can learn to make their own Godot games as well. I have a very exciting series coming super soon, and it's going to be either a survival series or a platform shooter. It's leaning more on the survival games side, so that's going to be coming out really soon, and sometime next week it should be. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope it did help you out. Stay safe and have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a very fun time coding all your games and having the time of your life. Thank you so much. And until next time, bye-bye.